One in particular drew
I'm
your
familiar
attention.
with. Yeah. It's a boy called Nick Vine Hall. Now, Vine Hall was a local boy, a North Sydney boy, was killed at Gallipoli.
The day of prayer for all people of this nation, whatever their faith, to give thanks and ask for the support of God to the end of the war. He also asked that we dedicate ourselves at this time to the memory of those who died. The report that the actual ceasefire order in this war started yesterday, but that the actual end of the war would not come until 1 minute past midnight tonight. The end of the war has come.
The dark cloud inside out till the boys come home.
Take us back, Will, to early November 1918. What was the Australian situation then?
Okay, the Australians had their last action at Montbrehan on the 6th of October, so they were well and truly finished their war. They were still training, the war was going on, they had little understanding of what negotiations and what was going on in the background. They didn't know that Bulgaria had capitulated and the Kaiser was in trouble and all of that. They had no idea.
As for Germany, though, what were the initiatives for peace in late 1918?
Okay, Germany had suffered a terrible defeat in the Battle of Amiens in August, right through September into October. They were pushed back. They lost much of their equipment, their men. They had very heavy casualties. Ludendorff called the 8th of August the Black Day of the German Army. I mean, that was the beginning of the end. And there was disruption at home. People were starving. There was a blockade that was working. And there was much discontent. There was mutiny in the army, there was, mutiny in the navy, there was disruption in the military.
They wanted it to end.
They wanted it to end. They all saw that the war was over. Ludendorff had gone to the Kaiser in late September and said, look, mate, the war's finished, we've lost. The Kaiser then, he abdicated on the 9th of November and fled to Holland and left the country open to whatever peace was going on.
Meanwhile, the Australian tunnellers were in action on the 5th of November, right?
Yeah, these poor buggers, they were tasked to lay a metal bridge across a canal under fire. Here we are 5 days before the end of the war and they're under fire and and in fact 3 Australians were killed in this action, probably the last Australians ever to die.
Tell me about the very last day before the armistice.
Look, it's a horrendous story. This is a book of mine, The Last 100 Days, and I'd like to just read you a bit because it sort of summarises it. At 11 a.m. on the 11th of November, all fighting ceased. The Americans and British continued fighting to the last minute. However, it is believed that around 10,000 men became casualties, of whom 2,700 died. This is on the last morning of the war. According to the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, the last British soldier to die was Private George Ellison of the 5th Irish Lancers, who was killed at 9:30 a.m, just 90 minutes before the ceasefire. The last Frenchman to die was killed at 10:50, that's 10 minutes before. Here's a runner delivering news of the armistice to his battalion. The last Canadian was Private George Lawrence Price of the 2nd Canadian Division, who was killed at Mons at 10:58, 2 minutes before the end of the war. He was recognised as the last Empire soldier to have died. The last American was Private Henry Gunter, killed at 10:59, a minute before the ceasefire. He was recognised officially as the last Allied man killed in the Great War. His divisional record states, almost as he fell, the gunfire died away and an appalling silence prevailed. The last German killed was a young officer called Thomas. As he approached a group of American soldiers to tell them the war was over, he was shot. It was just after 11 a.m. Finally, the war was over.
Wow, such a terrible end for so many.
10,000 on the last morning.
Yeah. On the day of the armistice, it's signed. Where were the Australians and how did they celebrate?
Okay, the Australians were, as I said, out of the line. They hadn't been involved in the fighting since early October. They were training, and they considered the war was going on. But they didn't realise that all this had happened behind the scenes. The negotiations, the Kaiser leaving. They were in camps, they weren't informed of anything. And even when the news came, many of them didn't believe that the war was over. In fact, Private Lynch in the Somme Mud book talks about getting on a train to go to the front. And they only believed it the day after when they saw British newspapers with "War's over" written on it. You know, the French are celebrating, but they wondered why these crazy French are jumping around and singing. So soon they did get into it, but they didn't. The peace was something they'd lost many men. There's a great sadness extended across the nation, across the battalions, because they thought of the men that weren't going home.
Keep the home fires burning while your hearts are yearning. Though your lads are far away, they dream of home. There's a silver lining through the dark cloud shining. Turn the dark cloud inside out till the boys come